Italians use a lot of cured meats. Curing is the process of preserving meat, usually by packing with salt, which helps to draw out the moisture. Once the meat has been dried out, it can last for months or even years. Here we have a pork leg being packed with salt. In America, this cut is usually referred to as a ham. However, in Italy, this cut is called prosciutto. The Italians almost always process it by salt curing. Here the hams are being hung. You can see the stamp that says Parma. Parma is actually a city in Italy. Instead of brand names of companies, in Europe many products are labeled by their region of origin. So prosciutto di Parma means ham from Parma. Let's take a quick look at the map just to give you some idea. Here you can see Parma in the northern region, where these prosciutto are made. That city is also famous for its cheese, which is called Parmesan. Other prosciutto you may see are from San Daniele in the northeast. So you may see something labeled prosciutto di San Daniele. What we call bologna in America is actually originally a cured meat called mortadella from the city of Bologna. Mortadella di Bologna got shortened to bologna. Here's a room filled with curing hams. But by the time we get it, it usually looks something like this. Italian cured meats, such as this prosciutto, are usually sliced paper thin. The thinner the better is the rule for most cured meats. It really enhances the flavor and gives it a better mouth texture as well. Here is some prosciutto which we've sliced and stored in some parchment paper, and it's ready to go right on a pizza. Obviously, we have to slice some of the meats during the day for use on the line at night. But really, only a minimal amount should be left over for the next day. After 24 hours, they are certainly not the same. They are cured, which preserves them for extended aging as long as they are in their original casing. But the second they are sliced, all bets are off and they start aging like any other food. The next cured meat is called capicola, also just shortened and called coppa. Whereas prosciutto is cut from the leg, coppa is cut from the shoulder. Here's a big shoulder roast being trimmed down. Next, you can see it's being covered in salt and also some spices. Then it's wrapped in a casing. Now, there are a couple of options for a casing. This is a natural casing, and so this comes from the intestine of a pig. Some meats are also wrapped in artificial casings, such as this one. But in either case, once they're wrapped, they're hung to dry. Can you see how the outside of this casing has this white mold that's growing on it? They've actually sprayed this mold onto it. The mold is safe and actually protects the meat from other molds in the environment which might not be so safe. Here you can see that all types of meats can be cured like this. On the right you actually see a whole duck which has just been wrapped and covered in salt and mold. Once the coppa has cured, which usually takes at least 2 to 3 months, you can see that it's dried out substantially. It's gotten a lot firmer to the point where it can be sliced very, very thin. The coppa that we buy usually looks something a little bit more like this. Take a look at the outside rim on this coppa. Can you see that it's got a little bit of orange on it? That's a spice that's been added. So capicola usually comes in 2 flavors, either called sweet, which is really just unflavored, and hot, which is usually covered with spices such as paprika and peppers and a variety of things. But since the spice is only on the outside of the meat itself doesn't have a ton of the spice. Instead, it's really just kind of the outer rim that has it. Prosciutto and coppa, representing the leg and the shoulder, are really just whole pieces of meat that have been cured. Because they're whole pieces, you can't really get a ton of spice into them or do a lot of flavoring. So what Italians like to do is they like to grind the meat up, and that way they can inject some spices into it. So here you can see 3 different meats. The coppa you have on the left, you can see the fat is all together. Soppressata is in the middle. It's kind of got a very coarse grind, and you can see that some of the fat has been cut up and distributed into it. And then on the right you see salami, which has been ground up a lot finer. To make a soppressata, they start by cubing the meat, and then it gets kind of a coarse grind to it. At this point, they can also add and mix in any spices they want. And here's the final product. This is actually made by one of our customers, Jason Molinari, who lives right here in town. He's from Milan, and he's got a cured meat blog. And you can see, since it's homemade, it's a little coarser. You can actually see some gaps where the meat was pressed together but not quite formed fully. That's very good, actually. It's very rustic, and this is actually a really, really high quality soppressata. Here's a great example of sweet and hot soppressata. So you can see the pinker meat is the sweet. It hasn't really been processed with much. The more orange meat is been processed with cayenne pepper and some paprika and some other spices which give it more of that orange tint to it. Here you can see in this slice, you can actually see little peppercorns and perhaps little bits of fennel seed that have been cut into it, as well as the little more orange color from the other spices. And here is the soppressata that we use, again, ready to be processed and put onto a pizza. Whereas both capicola and soppressata come in a hot version and a sweet version, in the store we only stock the sweet capicola and the hot soppressata. Here are another two types of salumi. Salumi, by the way, is an Italian word that just means cured meat. Salami is one type of salumi, but all the products that we're discussing here, all of the cured meats, fall under the category of salumi. Now, these two particular types of salumi are the ones that we actually put on the salumi pizza, although we could really call it a salumi pizza and put just about any of our meats on it. But these two are the ones we use. The one on the left is called Finucchiona, and it's a type of soppressata that actually has got a lot of fennel in it. The Italian word for fennel is Finucchia, so Finucchiona is the name of the meat. On the right, you see another meat called Toscano. Now, this one is cut a lot thicker than any of our other meats, and we just found that the way it cooks on the pie really works with a thicker cut than you'd normally see for any other cured meat that you were eating freshly sliced. Up until now, all the meats we talked about were pork. The next meat, called bresaola, is actually beef. So we start with a simple eye round, and then it gets rolled in salt and pepper and several spices, and then again it's wrapped and dried. The curing process goes on for about 2 to 3 months. You can see how deep purple it gets. It's got kind of a leathery texture compared to some of the cured pork products. But one of the reasons that Italian salumi meats are best sliced very thin is that the slicer is cutting through any tough fibers that may develop as it dries out. The idea is that all of these meats should almost melt in your mouth, even this tougher beef one. Contrast that with, say, a beef jerky, which is also a cured beef. Jerky is not typically sliced, and if you've tried it, you know how tough it can be. So the idea here is that the slicer is literally cutting through the fibers, so you don't have to. Italians are extremely particular about their salumi meats being cut paper thin. Now, here it is on a pizza. You can actually see that this meat hasn't been cooked onto the pizza. It's simply been placed on the pizza after after the pizza's already come out of the oven. Both prosciutto and bresaola are definitely better if they haven't been cooked onto the pizza. The prosciutto in particular really has a problem being cooked onto the pizza. It still has quite a bit of moisture in it. It's not quite as dried out as some of these other meats. And so when it cooks onto the pizza, since the pizza's cooked very fast, there's a lot of time for the moisture to come out of the prosciutto and start the meat steaming. But there's not a lot of time for it to dry up and crisp up. So there's nothing kind of worse than kind of wet, soggy, cured meat. So you don't really want that. So we place the prosciutto on afterwards. The same for the bresaola. The other meats, such as the soppressata, the capicola, the finucchiona, and the toscano, those are all baked right onto the pizza. Finally, we see pepperoni. Our pepperoni is very similar to the pepperoni you'd see in other stores. It's just kind of a higher quality brand than most stores would use. Our final meat is sausage. This is really just fresh pork which has been ground up. We buy it in the casing. We take it out of the casing and we add our own spices such as fennel seeds and white pepper and a few other things, and then we just fry it up.